Hello, and welcome to Made in the County. My name is Ryan Aldred. I'm your host for today's episode, A County's Ghost Stories. Last October, as part of the Regent Theatre's Raise the Curtain fundraising campaign, the Regent hosted a contest. The winner would get to haunt the Regent Theatre after they die. I won the contest, and am the Regent's ghost to be. I'm also a writer based in the county. My debut novel, Rum Luck, came out in 2016. And I run a small Canadian charity that supports education in Afghanistan, Tanzania, Uganda, and other at-risk regions. Today I will lead you through the unknown. I will lead you through the spooky and sinister stories only fit for the brave. But first, before we begin today's show, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge that we're recording at the Regent Theatre, which is located on the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy and other nations, recorded and unrecorded. We are grateful to the generations of ancestral stewards and caretakers of this land for the opportunity to live, work, and share stories in this place we call home. As a community that claims many descendants from among the original Loyalist settlers, we are respectful of and grateful to our Indigenous neighbors in Tyendinaga Mohawk territory and beyond, who continue to work with us to find ways to reconcile with our past and pave the way towards an inclusive future. In creating opportunities, like this podcast, for shared storytelling, we aim to bridge the territorial and cultural divides which have separated Canadians. First on today's show, we'll take a look into the Paranormal Seekers' investigation at the Regent Theatre, where they ask the question, is the Regent Theatre haunted? Then, students from Prince Edward Collegiate Institute will tell you 3 ghost stories. True or not, they will definitely be ones you won't forget. Next up, we will have Peter Lockyer, the creator of History Lives Here, lead us through a true Prince Edward County crime story. And we'll end off with a sneak peek of one of the Regent's next live concerts, the Dreamboats. Let's get started. All old buildings come with their sounds and shadows. They come with their stories that are passed down either by family or legend. The Regent has over 100 years of stories of being a theatre and many years more before the first picture was shown on its silver screen. And like all old buildings, the Regent shares a particular kind of story, a kind told to frighten children, a kind told to warn the uninformed, a kind of story only the dead can tell, a ghost story. The Regent has been home to many ghost stories throughout the years. Many are now lost with its storytellers gone, but the Regent hasn't stopped creating new stories. And because of this, we are led to September 18th, when the Regent's ghost stories were put to the test.
I can't breathe. You want to walk out? Yeah. Seed stuck in here. It's very powerful. He makes his presence known. Like, whoever is in that room, they know they're not alone. He's very aggressive, though. Like, very aggressive.
Ghosts are the forgotten, the ignored, the forgotten history that lurks through our halls. They're the shadows that you catch in the corner of your eye, the reason your house creaks at night, the reason you feel like someone is watching you. Ghosts are all these things, but maybe we create the ghosts. Maybe paranoia causes us to hear creaks and see shadows. Maybe that fear that someone is watching you is just your fear taking over. Or maybe there's something more sinister to it all. Rachel and her crew, the Paranormal Seekers, are paranormal investigators. They go to places where ghosts may lurk and look to see what is true or fiction. Their investigation at the Regent began on September 18th at 5 p.m. It will continue till midnight. All the audio you're about to hear was taken on that night.
So my name's Rachel, and I'm part of the Paranormal Seekers. Yeah, so the Paranormal Seekers started in 2004. Myself and a couple other individuals kind of just somehow fell into each other's lives. We had never done anything like this before, And we thought, hey, let's go to these places and check it out. And it just kind of snowballed from there. And here we are. Was it like 17 years later?
And this is my sidekick.
He's the one that gets to carry the equipment.
That's exactly why he's here. So basically what we do, or what I do, I should say, is that we will, and it all depends, like sometimes I will reach out or the location will reach out. So either way, someone reaches out and we just kind of go from there. We talk about coming and investigating. Sometimes emails we will get from readers of our pages to say, hey, have you checked out this building? We've been here and we've had an experience. This I've just found randomly searching, like the Regent. I found randomly searching on the internet one day, and I just looking at it, I was like, there's something about this building that we need to go take a look at. So I sent an email. Colleen got it, and we kind of planned. So we were originally supposed to come here, I think it was May or June. Unfortunately, because of the pandemic, we couldn't get here. So, like we say, spirits and ghosts, they have a way of having us come when it's good for them and when they're ready.
The Seekers brought a psychic along who claims to be able to connect with people who lived in the past.
If you talk to mediums and psychics and all that, they're all different. So I don't know what she goes through. I know she just walks in and she opens up. I don't know how to do that because I'm nowhere near that. I'm a dud, as they like to call it, but
It's on for everybody. And they're pretty steep stairs, so... Okay.
The group moved from the lobby to the upstairs, where the rooms used to be occupied by George Cook, the creator of the Regent, and his family are. They moved up the narrow, early 20th century stairs and found themselves standing where he once stood. The air was thick with anticipation.
Do we know how he passed?
I don't know.
Okay. Do you know how he passed?
George, I just think it was probably a heart attack. He was born in
81 and he died in 59.
Oh, 81 and died in 59. Okay. I knew it was around there. So yes, this was the main living room area. Attic now or attic later?
Everybody looks at me. Okay, we can go now.
Okay.
They proceeded up another tight staircase that was connected to the room. It led to the attic, where costumes and boxes filled with photos, files, and memories from the past cluttered the area, like a maze. This is where we got our first look at what a psychic can do.
There's another area, is there not? Because they're telling me there's another... Oh, there we go. I'm like, they're telling me there's another area.
Yeah, there is, but I'm not sure if I have the key to get in there.
Telling me that this part's not original to the original.
Well, that's probably right. I mean, the building predates its use as a theater.
Yeah.
So some of this, towards the rear, towards the auditorium, was added at some point. And then the high part of the back, the fly towers with the screens that, the stage sets that go up and down, that's not as old as the rest of the building.
It's not original to the original.
Okay. Then it was put on when the fly was put on. And that would make sense, because if you look at those bricks,
That's what I was saying.
they're the same bricks that are out.
And look at the joists where they
In
end
behind.
right here. If you look at the wall there,
Yeah.
and if you're looking
Right.
here, this
Yeah.
was exterior
It
brick.
was a whole,
Yeah.
After the attic, the crew went on to each and every room upstairs. Once done, they moved towards the projection booth. The thick steel door opened, and it was as if we opened the door for someone else. What happened next is something no one expected.
Alright. Was it a theater in 32? Okay, so then I feel like would he have worked lights or something in that? I don't even know if they had like that kind of lights.
Yeah,
like,
they would.
I feel like he's like this is his room.
Yeah.
And he does not like anybody in his room. He just said to me I work alone. Even though he's dead. He works alone. And he does not want us to be in here.
So this is the projection room.
There's a lot of activity in here. A lot. I'm telling you, I had Rachel go first because I like all of a sudden I don't like the energy in here. I'm okay with leaving.
Yeah.
And
I
like
will confirm that.
yeah, he does not like anybody in here. he makes it very known. I can't breathe.
You want to walk out?
Yeah. I need a second here. I'm very anxious. Like, I'm very, like... very nervous. I'm very anxious. I'm very, like, aggressive. This is weird because, I always, like, I'm trying to protect, but his energy is very strong and it's not good.
Now he's, would you say, a previous worker, previous employee, a friend? I get goosebumps all over that. I feel it right up my
Yeah,
and
he's
it's like-
he's very strong. He's very strong. Like I'm too. I'm like, and I don't let them in this close. Like his energy is not good. Like almost like Deseranto not good.
Oh, no.
Yeah, like I feel very aggressive. Am I an aggressive person? No, but I feel like I'm very aggressive right now. I feel like I'm like, I feel like he hits things off. Like he makes his presence known. Like he hits.
Knocks things off.
Yeah, like something to do with the number 32. Whether he died in 32 or he was 32, there's something to do with 32 with him.
The projection booth scene stayed with everyone the rest of the night. Your worst fear on a paranormal investigation is to find nothing, to be walking around in the dark and talking to walls. But it seemed the crew had connected with someone.
I work up there, right in
And
there.
he will bang things and knock things off.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's telling me, he's like, I personally, there's not too many times doing this that I don't like energy, and I do not like his energy whatsoever.
The crew in the region went into this investigation with questions. They left with more questions. They saw things they couldn't explain and felt things that couldn't be described. The story of the region is a never-ending one, and the questions we have may never be answered. Or maybe they already have. The question if ghosts are real is a riveting one. Not to speak for everyone, but I think most hope they are. It makes life more interesting. It answers those questions we all have about what's next. And the answer is, ghosts are real. Ghosts are stories, they're memories of a place and time. The Regent Theater is over 100 years old, 103 years to be exact. That is a vast history, but there is still more to tell. The building itself was there long before the Regent. That history is unknown. The building has more than just stories of ushers and projectionists and moviegoers. It has unknown stories, stories only the walls have seen. The saying if walls could talk could not be more appropriate in this moment. And though those stories are long gone, we still have the building. We still have the Regent Theater, where these unknown people walked and talked, where they shared stories with one another. Their stories live on in silence or in speech because the Regent lives on. The Regent is their silver screen to show their stories. Not all creeks are ghosts. Not all shadows are figures from the past. That doesn't mean they're not there. Hey everyone, my name's Logan Summers. I'm the producer of the Made in the County podcast. The Regent Theater would just like to say thank you to a few people for helping on the piece you just heard. We would like to say thank you to Colleen Johnson for organizing the Paranormal Seekers investigation here at the Regent. The piece you just heard wouldn't have been possible without her, so thank you very much. Also, a big thank you to the Paranormal Seekers for coming out. It was an experience I won't soon forget. And lastly, all the music you heard in this piece is by a YouTuber whose name is Repulsive. They make copyright-free horror music, and as you just heard, they're very good at what they do. So big thank you to Repulsive for doing what you do, and please check them out.
Are ghosts real? A question that has been asked since humans began telling stories, maybe even before. Of course, even the first humans saw shadows and felt the odd sense someone was watching them. Whatever the answer is, I don't think it matters. Ghosts have become something more than the dead crying out. Ghosts are now a way to explain the unexplainable. Ghosts are now an engine to tell stories, true or not. But if I know anything to be true, it's that everyone loves a good ghost story. So I would like to welcome a group of students and their teacher, Matt Chien, from the county's own high school, PCI, who are going to tell you a good ghost story.
Story 1. The Facility.
Point Peter, a distant shoreline far from any known trace of civilization. Here is where we find our protagonists. Breaking into a mysterious, dilapidated facility, they find themselves trapped in the compound.
Isaac, look. I think we should go back.
Michael, you know as well as I do that the fence is far too tall for either of us.
Yeah, I know. But I think going further into whatever this is for is a bad idea.
But it could be fun. It could be really fun. You have to learn to adventure, man.
Okay, whatever. It doesn't look like there is anybody here anyway.
The facility was peculiar. It was mostly made up of seemingly aimless hallways with no clear destination. The atmosphere of the building was strange. It had this looming intensity that permeated the winding hallways. The very air they breathed was dense with a compelling degree of magnitude of the facility's ancient purpose. The entire compound seemed sick with a foreboding ambiance. The building had character. The only illumination came from Michael and Isaac's cell phone flashlights. Man, this place is confusing.
Oh yeah, you do remember which way the exit is, right? Oh no.
What?
Which way is the exit? Which way is the exit?
Michael, calm yourself.
We're lost. Do not tell me to calm down.
Well, what do you recommend we do?
We have to do something. Maybe we should find somewhere that has the layout of this place.
Fine. The pair venture further into the building. With every step they take, they feel more uneasy. The only sounds were their footsteps against the VCT flooring. Past that, silence. Perturbed silence.
Isaac, look! I think this might be a layout.
Hey, you're right. Good find.
It says here that the exit is quite a ways away from here. Take a picture of the layout.
Wait. Michael, read this. Alpha Lab was constructed in 1981 as a research and development bed for the limits that DNA alteration has on humans. They both were silent. Beside the layout of the building, there was a description of its bygone purpose. As they individually read, they became more and more frightened. This facility was closed in 1989 after an incident regarding Experiment 13. The government feared that if word about our goals and the means we used to fulfill those needs got out, it could be used against us by the East. Or worse, the Soviets could try to replicate our experiments.
Isaac, I think we've bit off a little more than we can chew here.
Dude, look, there's an elevator.
Isaac, no. We know where the exit is. Let's please just leave this place.
Michael, do you not understand the opportunity we have here?
I can't say I do, buddy.
We can expose the government.
For 1 second in your life, try to think realistically here. We do not know whatever the hell is down that elevator.
But we can find out, Michael. We could be heroes. If you don't want to come, that's fine. But just know, I am offering a joint whistleblowing operation here.
Listen, you aren't Edward Snowden. We need to leave and forget all about this.
No, I am going down. Michael was hesitant to join Isaac at first, but they had been friends for their entire lives. They trusted each other.
Fine.
They enter the elevator in tandem.
What floor should we pick?
Let's pick the bottommost floor. The boys arrive and pick the first door on the right.
You go in first, Michael.
I will not be going first.
You big wussy, fine, I'll go first.
Oh my goodness, what is all this stuff?
I'm not the genius here. What do you think this stuff is?
It looks like a bunch of old science stuff.
Well, I think we should get out of here. It is way too creepy in here.
That sounds like a plan before we find any other creepy things. They both turn to the exit and start walking. They quickly realize that the door behind them is locked shut. Panic ensues. In an act of desperation, they try to bust down the door with their bodies. The door does not budge. What they didn't realize, however, was that they had created an incredible amount of noise. Enough to awaken the dormant Experiment 13.
Story number 2. The Ghost of Cherry Valley.
On a dark and stormy night, 2 teenage girls set out on an adventure to the graveyard. They had no idea the horror to come.
Oh, come on. It's not a big deal.
What if the cops show up? What if my mom shows up? My mom is way scarier than a cop.
You're such a wimp, Jane. I can't believe I'm here with a baby.
I want to go home, Zoe.
You are not going home. We already bought the spray paint. We are doing this.
Fine.
So they started to spray paint the gravestones with paint. Zoe was an expert at spray painting, so it was no challenge for her. As for Jane, it was more of a struggle. She had never touched spray paint in her life, and she had an uneasy feeling in her stomach.
That was awesome.
It was not awesome. It was wrong.
You are such a goody two-shoes.
Jane felt a cool breeze, the kind that makes hair stand up on the back of your neck. She shivered.
Did you just feel that?
No. What are you talking about, dork?
I felt something.
You are such a wuss. Let's get out of here.
You are not going anywhere. The girls turned around, and they came face to face with a ghost. The name on the gravestone was Edith Smith. Zoe was frozen with shock. Jane felt like she was going to faint. How dare you spray paint my gravestone? You will be punished.
We're sorry.
Run!
They started to run, trying to dodge the graves. Edith was not too far behind them. Then Jane fell.
Ouch.
Get up, get up. We don't have time for this.
The girls heard another voice, but it wasn't Edith. It was an elderly man with hair as white as snow.
Sup?
Please get out of our way.
Don't be so salty. Chill out, bro.
Who are you?
The name is Chad. Like my skateboard?
I think it's great.
Not the point, Chad. And by the way, your skateboard sucks. What are you talking about? My skateboard is lit.
A ghost is chasing us.
Man, that sucks. Want some ghost spray?
Huh?
Yeah, my ghost spray. Made from catnip, grape juice, Lysol, and applesauce. Totally, kills the ghosts and gets rid of the spray paint. The ladies think it's rad.
Jane felt a cool breeze on her neck. The cool breeze was all too familiar.
We gotta go now.
Give us the spray, Chad. 'Kay.
Zoe snatched the spray out of his hand.
Adios, dudes. I gotta roll. I have a date. Good thing I used the spray.
Bye, Chad.
Yeah, 'kay.
So Chad skateboarded off into the night. Just then, Edith made her presence known. You really thought you could get away from me?
Zoe, give me the spray.
No.
I said, give me the spray.
Really? This is what matters to you both right now? Ugh, teenagers. Zoe gave up and handed the spray to Jane. Jane fiddled with the lid, unsure of how to spray it.
Why did you have to make the lid so complicated?
Jane finally figured it out and started spraying it in Edith's direction. Ah! Not the Lysol! My eyes! My ghostly eyes! The spray caused Edith to dissolve into a translucent puddle.
We did it! Let's go home!
We still have to clean the gravestones.
Zoe and Jane used the spray to clean the gravestones. They still couldn't believe everything that had just happened. Suddenly, Jane felt the cool breeze again.
Run!
The two girls ran off into the night. An eerie silence filled the graveyard, except for one thing. If you listened close enough, you could hear the rattle of a spray paint bottle.
Story number 3, The Shed.
Welcome, listeners. This story I'm about to tell you is about a shed. But this was no ordinary shed. For deep down in the catacombs below lies a secret too dangerous to be set free. Our story begins at PECI. The lunch bell had just rang, and everyone was sitting down to eat their lunches. A group of students decided to eat in the courtyard, and in that courtyard lied a shed. No one knew what was in that shed, but soon those students would learn of the horrors going on within. One of the kids, Jack, got a bit too curious and attempted to open the shed door. But as he was about to open the lock, he felt a tap on his shoulder and heard a voice speak.
Hey there, kiddo. What you doing?
I was just trying to see what was in the shed, sir.
Well, that's all you had to say. Meet me after school here in the courtyard. Then I'll show you what's inside.
Mr. Sheen said, beaming.
Well, okay.
For the rest of the school day, the shed seemed to have an eerie glow until the final bell rang.
Hey, Jack.
Sorry, Mr. Sheen. You gave me a fright.
All right, let's go.
Jack slowly followed Mr. Sheen, trying to find an excuse to get away.
Mr. Sheehan, my mom just messaged me. I need to go home.
This will only take a few minutes. You'll be fine.
What do you mean? I'm not scared. It's just a shed.
I never said anything about being scared, but it might be a little creepy till I turn the lights on.
Well, how do you even get in? Do you have keys?
Yep, I do. Just watch out. I've heard things about this place.
What things?
Nothing, silly. I'm just joking.
Both Jack and Mr. Sheen went through the shed and down into the catacombs.
Hey, bros. Where did Jack go? He said he was going to meet Mr. Sheehan on school on Monday, but he hasn't come back since. Oh no, Mr. Sheehan has been maniacally laughing more than usual today. Why are you so worried, broski? It's just what he does on Thursdays. Well, during this conversation, I have been using my super hacking skills to find out that Mr. Sheehan took Jack to that old shed outside and left without him. Well, bro, let's go then.
They walked up to the pitch-black shed and jimmied the door loose.
Well, there is nothing in here that I can see with my phone. Yo, what if it is like that movie Death Killer 7 and a light switch revealed a trap door? Okay, but stand away from the center, as if you flip it, you might get hurt.
They followed as the voices, the chantings got louder and louder in the dark hallway. They peeked around the corner, and the teachers were all surrounding Jack and chanting about the powerhouse of the cell. Suddenly, Mr. Sheen appeared, wearing his everyday necklace. It was glowing. It seemed to be turning his eyes green.
Welcome! Time for the sacrifice!
Not so fast.
Mr. Sheen grew bigger and stronger until Kevin jumped into the air and cut his necklace off his neck. Mr. Sheen fell to the ground.
Let's get out of here, man.
They grabbed Jack and went home and played some Temple Run. The next day, they went to school. Nothing had changed, except Mr. Sheen wasn't wearing his necklace.
Hi, kids!
Good morning, Mr. Sheehan.
But as they walked by Jack, his eyes began to glow.
Thank you to all the students that helped bring those stories to life. And thank you to their teacher, Matt Sheehan, who helped make this segment possible. Ghosts aren't the only stories told on Halloween. The other kind of stories that send shivers down your spine are the ones we know are true. Nothing is stranger than real life. You'll even find the craziest ghost story will come second place to a true crime story. People are obsessed with true crime. In a way, it's a form of ghost story. We're looking into the life of someone who's lost theirs. But I think there's more to it than that. We all like to be scared, and a good ghost story will certainly make us jump. But a great true crime story will keep us up at night. Why? Because when we watch The Shining, for example, we can always tell ourselves when it gets too scary that it's just a story. But with true crime, we are left with the frightening thought that it's all true. And because life is stranger than fiction, it's also more frightening. So we would like to welcome a long supporter of the Regent to help us lead you through our next story. Please help us welcome Peter Lockyer. Peter is the creator of History Lives Here, that tells the true stories of Prince Edward County's past. Today he will tell you a true crime story that happened right here in Prince Edward County, the famous Lazier murder trial of 1884.
One of the most enduring tales in Prince Edward County history is the story of the 1884 Lazier murder trial. The story began with a botched robbery and murder at Christmas time 1883 when three masked men knocked on the kitchen door late one night of the Bloomfield home of Gilbert and Margaret Jones. The Joneses were farmers and devout Quakers. They had just been paid for their hop crop at the Bloomfield railway station. The large sum of $555, more money than a tradesman could earn in a year. Some local fellows thought they could easily steal this money as Quakers are pacifists and unlikely to put up much of a struggle. What they didn't know was that there was a non-Quaker Peter Lazier, staying that night at the Joneses' home. Lazier resisted the attempted robbery, a shot was fired, and Lazier was murdered. It snowed that night, and over the next hours, a posse followed the intermittent tracks in the fresh snow that seemed to lead to 2 homes on the shores of West Lake. By the next morning, 3 local men, brothers George and David Lauder, and Joseph Thompson, were in custody at the Picton courthouse. David Lauder was later declared innocent of any crime and released. But his brother George, a 23-year-old bricklayer, and Joseph Thompson, a 35-year-old fisherman, spent the winter in the tiny, drafty cells of the old courthouse, waiting for a trial that began on Tuesday, May 6, 1884. In the intervening months, anger within the community over the murder grew to a fever pitch, and there was enormous interest in the trial. People arrived early on the opening day, and the courtroom overflowed. Most were seeking more than justice. They wanted revenge. The boisterous outbursts of the crowd throughout the entire trial intimidated the jury of 12 local citizens, and there were several times when Judge Christopher Patterson cleared the courtroom as the jeers of the hostile crowd drowned out the testimony of witnesses. Lauder and Thompson pleaded not guilty, the only words they spoke at their trial. Under the justice system of the day, they were not allowed to testify. The testimony of their family and friends was not given much weight, and so their fate hung on the uneven evidence that came forward from witnesses, much of it based on the footprints in the snow that seemed to lead to their Westlake homes. Both Gilbert and Margaret Jones, the Quaker farmers, testified. Although they were firmly opposed to the death penalty, both felt bound to tell a truthful version of events as best they could. Gilbert Jones testified that he had hooked up his team of horses to take his crop to the Bloomfield Railway Station that fateful day, December 21st, 1883. By the time his wagon was weighed and unloaded, it was around 4 p.m. And while the day had started out as warm and sunny, it had turned bitterly cold with gusts of wind and snow. His horse team was shivering, and Jones hurried to get home. His guest, Peter Lazier, a family relative, arrived soon after. And while tending to Lazier's horse, Jones fell from a ladder in the hayloft and severely injured his back. He spent the rest of the evening laid up in an armchair close to the fireplace. At around 10 that night, there was a rap at the front door. When his wife, Margaret, opened it, 3 masked armed men appeared and demanded money. She ran to alert Lazier and her husband, who grabbed an unloaded shotgun as a weapon. As Farmer Jones entered the room, Lazier was locked in battle with one of the robbers. The 2 men parted, a shot rang out, and Lazier fell to the floor as Jones chased the men from the house. He testified that one of the men had a rolling gait, as if he were an older man with an injury that prevented him from running very fast. The matter of an older man with a limp was never discussed again at the trial. Jones also testified that the other robbers were about his own height, 5 foot 9 inches, taller than either of the 2 accused men. Margaret Jones originally testified that the intruders were taller and heavier than either of the accused. She thought one of them had a beard, but she later changed her mind after a conversation with Belleville Police Chief Hugh McKinnon, hired by the Lazier family. McKinnon turned out to be an unreliable investigator, willing to distort facts, intimidate witnesses, and to invent evidence, including his forged confession from Thompson that he used to try to extract information from Thompson's unsuspecting wife. But it was the footprints in the snow that dominated the case. The trail of footprints through drifting snow seemed to lead the posse from the Bloomfield crime scene across West Lake. The trail was intermittent, and one of the trackers, Aaron MacDonald, was known to have quarreled with Joseph Thompson and had been charged with assault. MacDonald was hardly a trustworthy witness. The trial transcripts for the case are held at the National Archives in Ottawa and at the County Archives in Wellington. Many pages of testimony involved the expertise of a local bootmaker who stated the footprints were likely from a workman's boot known as a patch bottom. the most popular footwear he made. He thought the tracks indicated they were from a size 8 boot, also the most popular size he made. Since there were many pairs of these boots of this size worn by local men, the defense team argued that the footprints were very circumstantial. They said testimony from family members indicated the men were elsewhere on the night of the robbery and murder. When captured, none of the men appeared anxious, sweaty, or fatigued from what would have been a 5-mile rushed escape across the lake. All of this evidence, or lack of it, from the footprints to the tainted witnesses and changing testimony, demonstrated the weak case against the 2 accused men. The prosecution, led by Belleville lawyer Roger Clute, argued that the 2 accused were the culprits who had planned a robbery that resulted in a murder, and they must be held responsible for the act. They stated the tracks in the snow were made by Lowder and Thompson, that after reflection, Margaret Jones had changed her testimony to now identify the 2 accused men as the likely suspects at her home. They dismissed the alibis put forward by family members, and they defended the integrity of Belleville Police Chief Hugh McKinnon and allegations that he had circumvented the law as part of his investigation. But the prosecution added one new critical, incriminating bit of information. Joseph Thompson had been seen at the railway station when Farmer Jones received his payment, and they accused Thompson of being the robber who fired the shot that murdered Peter Lazier. It's hard to say what swayed the jury's decision in the end. Despite reasonable doubt about the guilt of either man, the jury convicted both of them of murder, although they recommended mercy. But sentences with mercy conditions didn't exist at the time. A guilty verdict could only mean death, and Lowder and Thompson were sentenced to hang on the 10th of June, 1884. Over the next weeks prior to their execution, the 2 men were visited by local clergy. The ministers became so convinced of their innocence that they urged an appeal of the case. Local respected lawyer Edwards Merrill, the man who built the Merrill House on Picton's Main Street West, took up the case. He had attended the trial and thought it was a travesty of justice. He appealed to Canadian Prime Minister John A. Macdonald, who sent the case on to his Justice Minister. But the appeal was not successful. And in the early hours of June 10, 1884, the 2 men were led from their cells down a short corridor to gallows built especially for them. A sizable crowd gathered in the prisoners' exercise yard that June day to watch the hangings. Hangings were considered entertainment in those days. In places like Kingston, where hangings were more common, the events were sure to draw a sizable crowd. Lowder died first, but Thompson struggled for a full 14 minutes. Even this last act of a badly flawed trial was botched. Both men left heartbreaking letters to their families proclaiming their innocence. In his letter, George Lowder's last words denied ever visiting the Joneses' farm, and he forgave his accusers. "I thought I would write you a few lines before I die," he stated. "God is my witness that I am innocent of having anything to do with the murder of Peter Lazier, and when I am hung for that crime, the innocent is published for the guilty. I die bearing neither spite nor malice against anyone, and my wishes are that all my enemies may be forgiven, as truly as I hope to be forgiven for all my sins. Believe me, I do not die a murderer or with a murderer's heart. If I knew who was guilty of the crime for which I am to suffer death, I would make it known. I was not in Mr. Gilbert Jones's house, nor on his premises in my life, to my knowledge. These are my last and dying words." Thompson left behind a wife and daughter. His letter addressed the testimony against him and said a final farewell to his family. "These are my last dying words. I am ready to die, but I die for something I never did. I never was in Gilbert Jones's house in 15 years. I never saw Jones get any money at the station, but I must say it is like all stories that is told against me." Mrs. Jones swore at the examination that the men were larger than we, and at the trial that we looked just like the men. She said the man who fired the shot had on a gray suit of tweed. I had on my black clothes that day. They say I fired the shot, but thank God I was not there to fire any shot, so I cannot confess to the crime, nor I never will. Believe me, I am innocent. I declare to my God these last words, I die an innocent man. My heart aches for my sweet little girl, but God will take care of her and you all. Goodbye and farewell forever till we meet in a better world. A feeling of great remorse swept throughout the community following the trial and hanging. There was widespread doubt about the guilt of the men and whether at least one of them, George Lauder, should have been spared. It was convention in those days that prisoners were buried on site at the local jail. And legend has it that 2 trees in the exercise yard at the Picton Courthouse marked the spot where Lauder and Thompson were laid to rest. But amidst all the trial documentation at Library and Archives Canada is a short note from Sheriff Gillespie to Justice Department officials asking for guidance as the Lauder family had requested the body of George be returned to them for burial. There's no record of a response to Gillespie's inquiry, but around 2004, workers at Glenwood Cemetery in Picton were clearing parts of the property of old brush in the woods, separating Glenwood from the neighboring Catholic cemetery, Mount Olivet. They discovered a sunken grave with a crude headstone that said, G. Lauder, hanged unjustly, 1884. Now, not everyone agrees that this is Lauder's final resting place. But if it is, it demonstrates the community's profound regret over his death. Burying a convicted murderer on consecrated ground is a simply extraordinary act. The 1884 Lazier murder trial had many outcomes. From then on, local juries in the county were extremely reluctant to convict accused murderers, whatever the evidence. Over 100 years later, in 1976, the Canadian Parliament narrowly voted to abolish the death sentence. And shortly after we put on a play in July 2014 about the trial, set in the old courtroom of the Picton Courthouse, I had a school chum show up at my door. He wanted to talk about a pair of patch-bottom boots his grandfather had uncovered while renovating a Picton home. They were found stuffed in a wall, and the family had donated them to the Macaulay Museum, which has displayed them as part of a small exhibit at the courthouse. My schoolmate's question was whether these were the boots of the real murderer, hidden away in a wall to ensure their guilt was never discovered. Could these have been the boots worn by the mysterious third man with the limp, a rolling gait as described by Farmer Jones in his testimony? People did sometimes place shoes in the walls of their home for good luck, but we will never know whether these boots were for good luck or an effort to hide a murderer from a death sentence. It's all part of the enduring mystery of this county tale. To learn more about this county story, read the book The Lazier Murder, Prince Edward County, 1884, by retired Justice Robert Sharp, a Picton resident.
That's a story we won't soon forget. Thank you, Peter, for bringing us back into the past. No one does it better than you. To end off this month's show, we're going to step away from the ghosts and give you a sneak peek into one of our next live concerts. On November 20th, 2021 at 8 p.m., the Dreamboats are bringing back good old rock and roll on the Regent stage. With a sound that is equal parts Chuck Berry and the Wonders, this quartet of Canadian boys delivers a high-energy show that has audiences dancing the night away. You can get your tickets now at www.theregenttheatre.org. Hurry before they're sold out. Now your promised sneak peek. Here is Heartbreaker, then Lights Down Low by the Dreamboats.
I got a sugar-shaking mama, yeah, you know she doesn't come up, so shake, mama, shake, shake, mama. See, I'm looking for your drama, yeah, you know I can't take no more. Hey, drama, hey, drama. See, I don't cause no trouble, I don't cause no fight. Ooh, I'm breaking hearts tonight. You be a blast from the past, little mama, I'm that cruising. I whip my country, yeah, I'm bumping around. Come from the back, little mama, why your eyes are closed? Now they don't want me up in here because I do it the most. See, I don't cause no trouble, I don't cause no fight. Ooh, I'm breaking hearts tonight. You be a doorstopper. breaking hearts tonight. I wanna beg for you. Ooh, babe, I wanna beg for you. Ooh, babe, I wanna beg for you. Ooh, babe, I wanna beg for you. Ooh, baby, now let me break your hearts tonight. Woo! Girl, and you can leave with your life. See, I don't cause no trouble, I don't cause no fight. Cause no trouble, I don't cause no fight. Cause no trouble, I don't cause no fight, yeah. Ooh, I'm breaking hearts tonight. Started with a kiss, heavy top scenario. I'm hoping that it comes to this, so we can see just where the story goes. How soon we'll walk into your room, we know just what to do. Just tell me all the things you want and why. Between your little thighs, just staring in your eyes. Let's hit the switch and no more talking. Cause if we're really starting something, let's do it with the lights down low. And we can make it all or nothing. So give it to me, just give it to me. Just let me grab you by the hips, yeah. We'll dance around just like a merry-go. Get to the point you can't resist, yeah. You turn around and kill the stereo. How soon we'll walk into your room, you know just what to do. Just tell me all the things you want now. Between your little thighs, just staring in your eyes. Let's hit the switch and no more talking. Cause if we're really starting something, let's do it with the lights down low. And we can make it all or nothing. So give it to me, just give it to me, oh.
We hope you can join us at the Regent Theatre in November to enjoy more music from the Dreamboats. Well, that's it for today, folks. Thank you for listening. Tune in next month for On the Homefront, a podcast about Prince Edward County during wartime. Follow the Regent Theatre on social media for programming updates. A special thank you to today's storytellers, artists, and the community and government organizations which made this podcast possible, including the County of Prince Edward, Loyalist College, and PECI. Made in the County is a Regent Theatre production, produced by Logan Summers, executive produced by Alexandra Seay. The opening theme is courtesy of Sam Dubois. If you liked what you heard here, subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen. That's it for this episode. See you next time.
Lights down low.